Hi, everybody, and welcome to Exegetically Speaking, a podcast of the friends and faculty of Wheaton College, Wheaton, Illinois. And this year, in our second season, we're doing something different. We're partnering with the Lanier Theological Library in Houston, Texas, to bring you these podcasts. My name is David Capes, and I'm the Senior Research Fellow at the library and former Dean in the School of Biblical Theological Studies at Wheaton College. Our purpose in these podcasts is really pretty simple. We want to promote the study of biblical languages, Greek, Hebrew, and Aramaic, so that we can read the Bible more faithfully, study it more fully, and not just read it and study it, but also to live it. Joining me today on the podcast is Dr. Julie Newberry, Assistant Professor of New Testament at Wheaton College. Julie, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
It's great to see you again. And congratulations, first of all, on finishing your first academic year at Wheaton College. Quite a year, because right now that this podcast, we're in the middle of the COVID-19 thing, and it's going to affect so much about what happens in colleges, universities, and seminaries over the next year.
Yeah, thank you. It has been quite a year, but I've enjoyed my time at Wheaton.
And you have recently finished your PhD as well.
Right, yeah. I just defended my dissertation on joy via Zoom on April 1st.
And so that was a successful defense, I'm sure. And you have it in your hand, which is a nice thing, and you're working and moving toward publication.
Yes, thankfully.
Yeah. Well, we're going to talk today a little bit. You wrote about joy, so we're going to talk a little bit about joy in the Gospel of Luke. And in particular, we're going to focus in upon Luke chapter 1, verse 28. Tell us a little bit about your thoughts about that particular text.
Yeah, so Luke 1:28 is a very familiar passage to a lot of Christians. You probably hear it quoted every Christmas. It's the verse where the angel Gabriel comes to Mary and says, in a lot of English translations, something like, "Greetings, favored one, the Lord is with you." However, the Greek word that is translated as greetings, chaira, actually can work as a greeting in Greek, but it can also mean rejoice. And so in my dissertation, one of the things I looked at was the question of, does that word mean rejoice, or is it just a greeting? Or is it maybe doing both?
Now, if you say it's a greeting, it's sort of almost a passive word, right? I mean, you say, well, hello, there's not really expected any kind of response other than maybe, well, hello back or something to you. But if it's a chaire, which is rejoice, it has a different character, doesn't it?
Yes, yeah. I think if it were working just as a greeting, it would be sort of similar to welcome in English. You say welcome, you're not actually telling the person that they did a good job coming. It's just a conventional saying we have. And the same in Greek, the verb chairein can be used as a conventional greeting. When Luke uses it as a greeting, which he doesn't do very often, but he normally does not use the imperative form as a greeting, although other writers do. But in Luke 1:28, he uses specifically the imperative form, which I think is one reason to think maybe this is not just a greeting here. It's a greeting, but maybe it's also a command to rejoice.
So it comes from a Greek word chairo, right? Which and that means I rejoice, or I am glad, I make glad, something like that. But as an imperative, it is almost like a mandate to be joyful.
Right. And it's interesting because Mary doesn't respond by immediately rejoicing. Actually, if you look at verse 29, it says that Mary is perplexed by the angel's words.
Right.
And she is wondering, what sort of greeting is this? Which is another reason to think that it may be a command. Because if Mary were hearing it just as typical greeting, it would be weird for her to wonder about the greeting.
Right.
I think
that's an interesting insight, because I haven't thought about it in those terms.
Because there's an angel appearing to her, and she doesn't react to the fact that there's an angel. She's not thinking, oh, why is there an angel? She's wondering about his greeting, which seems like a strange thing to focus on when there's an angel there.
Now, is there a similar greeting with Zechariah earlier in Luke?
Yeah, so Zechariah is not greeted in the same way. There is a mention of joy in the Annunciation to Zechariah, but the angel's first words to him are, "Don't be afraid, Zechariah,"
Mm.
which is a typical angel thing to say,
Right. The
"Don't be
typical
afraid."
angel thing. Okay. That was their first class in angel school.
That's right.
Learn to say this, do not be afraid, because these people will be very afraid of you at
Yeah,
that point.
except for Mary, who will fixate on your greeting.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah. So is this sort of a future impact? Okay, you're not going to rejoice now, but you will rejoice in the future. This will bring you joy, and yet it doesn't through the story, right? Because Jesus is crucified. I mean, her son is brutalized and tortured and such. So,
yeah.
but there is a sense of eschatological joy. I take it in
Mhm.
Luke.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for Mary, there's sort of an already not yet that happens with the joy.
Hmm.
She rejoices when she gets to Elizabeth's house and she speaks the Magnificat, "My soul rejoices in God, my Savior," and so forth. But then a couple verses later in chapter 2, Simeon does warn her about the sadness that she's going to experience as the mother of this person who will be rejected.
Mm.
And in Luke 24, we don't hear about Mary's response in particular, but we see Jesus' disciples move through that sadness into joy. And it's a slow process.
Yeah, it doesn't happen. I like that the phrase you use, kind of a delayed response to the joy command, right?
Yeah, yeah. Mary models that you can be commanded to rejoice and respond in a delayed fashion. And that's not necessarily blameworthy or a sign of a lack of faith. In fact, she's commended for her faith.
Yeah, she's commended for her faith, even if she's troubled at first by this greeting, and
Hmm.
she will find trouble later on in life as for what happens with her son. You know, I'm thinking
Right.
about Paul's command: "Rejoice in the Lord always," and again I say
Yeah.
rejoice. And I've heard that over and over, and people have, but sometimes people aren't in a place to rejoice. Things that are happening or have happened to them, but they still know that somehow in faith they're going to get there, I guess.
Yeah, I think Luke's gospel definitely makes space for joy that is very forward looking. That you, to the extent that you experience any joy in a given moment, it may be all about something that is not yet present.
Hmm.
And I think in Mary's case, she doesn't even experience that joy yet. She just trusts God and keeps acting in obedience, moving towards the joy,
Hmm.
but she's not experiencing the joy right away. And
Yeah,
that seems to be okay. She's never shamed or punished or anything. She's only
right.
commended.
Good. Really interesting insights, Julie. Thanks for being with us today on Exegetically Speaking.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thanks as well to Silvio Vasquez, Rebecca Larson, and Krista Sanchez for helping us edit and produce this podcast. If you want to study biblical languages, then the best place you can do that is Wheaton College. They have a great program with great faculty like Julie here and other students that will encourage you and challenge you, whether you're studying at the graduate or the undergraduate level. So go to the website, www.wheaton.edu. Look for modern classical languages to get started today, or if you're at the graduate level, go to the Master of Arts in Biblical Exegesis. They have a program that's probably just right for you. If you have questions or comments about this podcast, we'd love to hear from you. Contact us at exegetically.speaking@wheaton.edu. That's exegetically.speaking@wheaton.edu. Thanks for listening.